Public hearings into land reform began today. The process gives citizens an opportunity to air their views on expropriation without compensation and to participate in the review of Section 25 of the Constitution. Director and Land Claims Specialist at Werksmans Attorneys, Bulelwa Mabasa, joins us now. Bulelwa, what is the main importance of Section 25 and why are we here reviewing it?
The importance of Section 25 is that this is a section within the Bill of Rights that seeks to protect landowners from arbitrary deprivation of property, but in the same breath, it also directs the state to ensure that land reform is achieved. So it is a balancing act between ensuring those property right holders against an arbitrary deprivation, but at the same time, it also is a direct instruction, if you like, to the state to ensure that land reform happens. And when we talk about land reform, you must always remember that we're talking about three pillars of our land policy, and that is restitution, redistribution, and security of tenure.
And what are the rights of South Africans when it comes to land, if you just simplify the legalities around that?
Look, the right to land is, it's interesting that you ask the question in that way. There isn't a right to own land in the Bill of Rights. As I stipulated earlier, the right that you have is a right not to have your land taken away from you in an arbitrary fashion or without following the law. And insofar as land reform is concerned, the Constitution, being an aspirational document, also envisages that our state, in recognition of the past injustices that have happened, will be will galvanize itself in order to help those that are landless to ultimately be given land. And so there's a restorative justice mechanism that is a very important one that sits within our Constitution.
Now, across South Africa, all 9 provinces, all the communities will get a chance to, have their voice heard about this land issue. How's the review process going to work, and who are the real stakeholders there?
Look, I think every single South African is a stakeholder, whether or not you're an aspirant landowner or if you're a current landowner. I think it is a process that is all-encompassing. Public consultation, as you know, is a concept that has been blessed by our Constitution, in that whenever there is legislation that is to be introduced that affects the rights of people, then everybody from all sectors of society must be involved.
Should Section 25 change after this review process, how would that affect the land procedure in South Africa in terms of expropriation of land without compensation?
Look, I think it's important to understand that what the process currently entails is that the public is going to share its views on whether or not, firstly, the Constitution ought to be amended. What has already happened, what is a matter of policy at the moment, is that the 54th ANC conference resolved that expropriation without compensation must be one of those mechanisms to speed up land reform. So we are already sitting with a policy that has been made by the ruling party to expropriate without compensation. Now, the distinction between that and the process that is happening now is that this process is to find out whether or not the Constitution or Section 25 ought to be amended in order to realize expropriation without compensation. So once the parliamentary committee has done its work, it'll then come to the WASH. I believe that there's now been an extension to the 28th of September for the committee to revert to us on its deliberations. That process will uncover whether or not there's got to be an amendment of the Constitution, of Section 25 of the Constitution, in order to enable expropriation without compensation.
The land reform program has been plagued with a number of challenges in terms of those that have been given arable land have not been able to govern it properly or make it commercially viable. So will the review process also be looking at some of these challenges?
Look, I think those challenges, when the review process happens, we've got to look at challenges from a macro level. we have to look at all the burdensome issues that have plagued the land reform project for the last 22 years. Yes, the issue of a lack of post-settlement support by government has been one of the highlighted issues that have actually not assisted in addressing the issue. But that is not the only challenge that has dogged the land reform project. We know that the financing of this department that is tasked with this very important task has been only provided with less than 1% of the national budget over the years. So there's been a dwindling budget issue. And over and above that, there's been lack of policy, consistency. You know, in other words, there have been policies that have chopped and changed in terms of an emphasis on whether or not land reform is about land for residential purposes or land for agricultural purposes. So all of those issues will come to the wash and will be important in determining the outcome ultimately of what our new land policy will look like post this process.
All right, then all South Africans, of course, encouraged to be part of that process. That was Director and Land Claims Specialist at Werksmans Attorneys, Bulelwa Mabasa.